Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm going to talk about fire protection and certification and ensuring best practice. I'd like to pick up on a couple of points that have been raised earlier on that have occurred to me, and occurred to me many times I'm giving presentations. The ASFP is a trade association of manufacturers and contractors in passive fire protection, but we're also a fire association, so we have a foot both in the construction industry and a foot in the fire industry, and that gives us quite an interesting insight into both. I always, you see the situation from both sides. And the construction industry, I like to say, a light-hearted way, is like a boil, all right? And Grenfell lanced the boil, and we're all dealing with the fallout, because all the problems that were there long before Grenfell, all the problems of the race to the bottom. Little known fact that, main contractors in the UK are working on a margin of minus 0.9%. So how sustainable is that? So that's a figure from Build UK. Anyway, right, I'll get on with the subject in hand, which is I'm going to talk about competency, accountability, traceability, third-party certification. But first of all, you have to hear about the ASFP, because that's what I'm here for. As I mentioned, we're a trade association. We have about 200 members of various different categories. It was formed in 1975 in recognition to bring together those stakeholders in passive fire protection, manufacturers, contractors, and the testing and certification bodies to encourage and develop and give guidance. And that yellow book is the first publication we produced, and that's now in its fifth incarnation. As well as that, we also have a number of colour books, which are referred to in the approved documents. So I've mentioned the yellow book, that's the red book from fire stopping. We have the passive fire protection guide for fire risk assessors, which is very useful for fire risk assessment when they're conducting an assessment under the order. We have a best practice guide for passive fire protection, and we have a nice short on-site guide to fire stopping, and I have examples of all of those here if you want to look at them later on. And finally, we have a list of library videos on YouTube on passive fire protection, all the different types, and what to undertake during a risk assessment. Now, moving on to the theme of competence. Last year, we launched our ASFP Foundation course in passive fire protection, and you notice there's an IFE logo on there, because these courses were developed in conjunction with the IFE, that's the Institution of Fire Engineers. And we did that to give them some rigour and to give them some academic basis. Every one of these dogs is offering a course on this and that on the other. And what level is it? I just diplomas in fire stopping, but what are they related to? Well, because we work with the IFE, and the IFE are an awarding body, and work with Ofqual, the qualification that you get at the end of the ASFP course, once you've done the exam, is an Ofqual recognised qualification. So we've got the level 3 and the level 2. Level 3 is the target audience is senior people like yourselves. Oh, that's handy. Managers, supervisors, technical sales staff, designers, senior people. It's 7 days spread over several weeks, classroom style, possibly also up to quite a lot of reading, and there's an IFE exam at the end. To give you an idea of the toughness of it, it's like doing an A-level. So we've got something like 35 people have gone through it so far, and it's a tough one, but it's very good. The course itself is split into 4 modules. As you can see, fire science, passive fire protection, active fire protection, building regs, codes and guidance, and obviously the passive fire one is the biggest one because it's a passive fire protection course. As well as a level 3 certificate, we have the level 2 certificate, which is designed for site operatives, senior site operatives and team leaders. What's more interesting is an introductory course which we're just about to launch for site operative. This is for the coalface workers and for new entrants to it. It's online-based, it's video tutorial, and it lasts about 3 hours. We'll be launching that very soon. And we're also pushing that into CITB for them to put for anybody who's working on site. Okay, that's enough about us. You've got a website you can find out about there. Passive fire protection, I get the impression you guys all know about it, but just to be absolutely certain, it's built-in measures that protect the structure of the building and subdivide it into areas to limit the spread of fire and smoke. And there's 2 basic types of structural fire protection, to make sure a building doesn't fall down, and compartmentation. And for structural fire protection, which is to maintain the structure, we protect the structure with various products like sprayed and inert mineral fibre there, bore systems there, and what is more commonly used now is what we call these reactive coatings. I mean, that looks like a bloke spraying a beam with paint, because that's a bloke spraying a beam with paint. But when you heat it up, it all swells up and forms this char. A bit like the incandescent in an incandescent strip on the fire door. But what you're probably more familiar with and more worried about is compartmentation, which we know is to subdivide the buildings into areas of manageable risk, to provide an adequate means of escape, fire separation between the building you're in and adjacent one, and the last one that people forget, as Nick Coombs says, access and protection for firefighters. That's very important. What does passive fire protection look like? Well, fire doors, I'm not going to explain all those. The fire stopping there, where you've got cables and services and pipes going through walls and floors, fire-resisting ducts going through compartments, a fire damper. And this is one thing you're going to see more of. You're seeing it more in high-end, which are fire curtains. It's not smoke curtains, they're fire curtains. They're kind of instant compartmentation. If the alarm goes off, if the power fails, this curtain will lower from the ceiling and it provides the instant compartmentation. Okay, and we have all this talk about all the problems with passive. I've got lots of pictures of examples of where it does work. And just going back to the case in point, just a couple of weeks after Grenfell was a fire in Birmingham, suspected arson on the 22nd story. It's quite a large fire. It's quite a serious fire. And the area commander of West Midlands Fire Service allowed people to leave the building, even though it had a stay-put policy, because of some of the controversies around stay-put, which were still coming to light. There were no injuries. About 750 people lived in the tower block. And he also said the building's design, which includes compartmentation, performed as expenses. No story. A bit like the little girl jumps out in front of the car, driver puts the brakes on and the car stops. It's not really a story. That's it. All you hear about is some of the bad stuff. There's a few little stay-put statistics there. 2017 and 2018, the vast majority of fires stay within the room or compartment of origin. As you might expect it, flats is quite good, generally speaking. Common living, where there are lots of people, hostels and hotels, less so good. And this is one I've got, 2009. I'm trying to get some later figures. Out of 8,000 fires in purpose-built block of flats, evacuation of more than 5 flats only occurred in 22 times. Right, problem solved. There's not an issue then, is there? We all know that. Now, Elaine showed her stash of passive fire protection porn, but I have a better stash. Unfortunately, it's larger as well. I'm really sorry about this. So some of these, this is a fire-resistant wall that never quite made it to the ceiling. This is foam, PU foam, put into a riser cupboard. Just somebody gets their hands and goes, well, that's going to be good. That's fairly obviously mastic has come away, and this is more foam. And these blue things, people are getting to see this now. Do you know what they are? Anybody guess what they are? They're the overshoes that you wear when you go into... You didn't know they were fire resisting, did you? No. All right, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, there's too much of that. And there's too much of that because people can get away with it because they're not pulled up on it. Right, so what are the issues that cause poor installation? Now, Lorna mentioned this one there, design and build. Sometimes I get to this point in the presentation and say, presentation's over, guys, now. Get rid of design and build. That gets rid of so many of your problems. I mean, you don't see the guy running along the Jaguar on his factory line at Harewood and say, right, we need to put a door in there. Give me a marker pen and I'll just mark the bodywork. Hang on, just keep going. And then guy with a drill, come over here. You know, you design it and you build it. You don't make it up as you go along. No bar to entry for passive fire protection installers. If you've got one of them, and one of them, and one of them, you are a fire stopper. There is no requirement. And I ask you this question, would you allow an unqualified plumber or electrician to work on your building? You wouldn't, would you? So why do you allow unqualified passive fire protection installers? There's not enough inspection or enforcement for products that are invisible when installed. I think this has been the driver behind all the third-party schemes. For whatever reasons, that's one of these people, they're forced by monetary considerations or whatever, or because they're dishonest to take shortcuts, and there's not enough picking up. So we need to address that. So that doesn't help with the accountability. This other stuff, fixation on price and not value, we mentioned it earlier, breaking of specification, that was mentioned by a previous speaker, multiple subcontracting, because you multiple subcontract down the chain, the quality of the work goes down, the quality of the staff doing it goes down. Poor sequencing of work. When I used to give these presentations, before I got involved with REBA and the plan of works for fire, I just assumed that all bad workmanship, it was all down to bad workmanship. And now I'm learning now that a lot of it is also down to poor design. Architects and senior technical designers now realise that they don't know enough about passive fire protection, which is one of the reasons we developed the Level 3 course. And they're designing often things that are impossible to make. Lack of maintenance, action by follow-on trade. So, is it an industry-wide problem? Is it just a fire problem? What about other disciplines of trade? Right, there we are. This is a picture here. There's nothing fire about here. Anybody know what that is? Hands up. I'm surprised. A few of you do. A few of you have. I bet you would. That's the Oxgangs Primary School in Edinburgh, where you've got two leaves of masonry there, an inner leaf and an outer leaf, and during a storm, the outer leaf blew off. And the reason it blew off was because the ties between the inner and outer leaves either weren't fitted or weren't long enough. And they just built the wall anyway. Bit odd. And the part of the reason it happened is because where you have the steel work here, there was a larger gap, so the ties that had been supplied weren't large enough to do the job. And they had about 5 or 6 schools where this happened. I thought it just happened on the one. So the measure there is not enough inspection, not enough rigour, not enough this, that and the other. So, but the point is, it's not a fire issue, it's a construction industry issue. And then this happened before Grenfell as well. So guess what, when you look in this building and you looked at the fire stopping, they had holes here and things weren't there. So what's the answer? Well, we inspect everything, right, or competent person schemes, or third-party certification. Well, inspecting everything is very positive, it's foolproof, and it's thorough, and it's changing the situation site, but it's very expensive, it's time-consuming. Put in practical, it's possibly impossible to inspect everything, and things change so often. So, while it does some things, it gives you accountability and traceability, it doesn't give you your, do you have another thing? Right, competent person schemes. Right, that's my house. Right, remember this, count the windows, okay? If you can count to 3, you've made it, at least 3, okay. And these are the certificates I've got for the competent person scheme. A fencer, one for windows, it's a Corgi one, it's pre-gas safe, and an NIC, IEC. So this is documentation. I know that my house has been built properly, or bits of my house have been remedied. The fencer one says 3 windows installed. It doesn't say where they're installed or which type they are. The Part P one says 1 or more electrical circuits, alteration or addition in kitchen, stroke special location, electric floor or ceiling heating. It's for the underfloor heating, but I only worked that out by finding it. And the Corgi one says a gas boiler installed. Okay, that's traceable because I've actually got the gas boiler and I know where it is. So it doesn't show for competency, it's not so good on traceability and doesn't develop accountability. So what we've always been pushing is third-party certification. I'll talk a bit about that. Why do we need it? Builders generally don't understand fire protection, general builders. Other trades like plumbers and electricians don't have a concept of the system or the need, and construction errors are often not easily seen and often hidden away. What is it? It's a guarantee of service or quality for any of the stakeholders who are interested that you're going to produce or install what you say you're going to install. It's independent of the supplier, so it's not me saying I'm a really good supplier or I'm a really good installer. It's one of the third-party bodies saying it. It's encouraged by the authorities, such as some here and MHCLG. It's all the fire trade associations, that's the active and the passive, are well on board with that. Creates a level playing field, and of course it's a, if you're an installer, it's a protection against claim. So look at the situation, how we have it at the moment with our cowboys. With no certification, We have no barrier to entry, I mentioned that. Products installed by untrained staff, so you haven't got any competence. Use of unproven products or systems, wrong or missing components, so you haven't got the traceability that you need to link back. No certificate of completion and no independent inspection of works. So you lose your accountability. So you see, if you don't have certification, you don't have that. But with this certification, only staff whose competence has been evaluated are used. So you get your competence there. Only third-party certificated products are used. There's mix and matches of products. The record of jobs, of the right jobs must prove the right products are used. So you get your traceability of products. Because if you make a third-party certificated product, they're all labelled. Just like you have a recall on a car, you can have a recall on your fire door. And finally, you have a certificate of completion issued by the certification body and random inspection on site. And that gives you your accountability. So that's why we support third-party certification. It's been the position of the ASFP for about 20 years, and we always recommend to use third-party certificated contractors installing third-party certificated products. Moving on to a couple of little how things are up to date and predictions for the future. You might be aware there's an industry response group working on competence, comprising Build UK, which is contractors, large and small, Construction Products Association, and then the professionals in the construction industry council, and we're members of all three of those organisations because we have interests there. The idea of the industry response group, I had to modify this slide because this was going to say April. They're working on the Chapter 5 Hackett recommendations on competence, and the idea is they will submit a report to MHCOG in the spring, in April, but it's slipping a bit, to set up a body to oversee delivery of competent people in the construction industry, all practitioners, all levels, from architects right down to fire safety managers. There are 14 working groups. We're on 4 of them. They're not that well managed. I think this is going to slide. This is not, it will happen, but it's working. Developing a skills framework for those involved in building inspection control. I'm sure Lorna will know more about that than I do. And a robust and comprehensive system for the competence of building safety managers. In the latest implementation plan, just before Christmas last year, the government published the implementation plan for the Hackett Review. And I picked out a couple of snippets here. Work with industry to develop minimum standards for third-party certification schemes to cover manufacturing, installation and inspection. And also in another part of that report, they're talking about further improvements to standard. We will continue to work with industry to establish minimum standards for third-party certification of key fire safety products, including their installation and inspection. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that they're going to make it mandatory. Whether or not they will or not, I don't know. There's always a habit of government slipping back, but there we are. I mean, and I'm just going to, as I've got still 1 minute, 50 minutes of my 90 minutes and 54 seconds that I had allocated, I'm going to go. Hackett report, you're right, it was bang on. It's bang on, and she didn't recommend any quick fixes. She didn't say you got to fit sprinklers, you got to do more passive, you got to ban combustible materials, because she identified the system was wrong. If we had, and that's why the ASFP, we've got Kingspan in our membership and Rockwell in our membership, so we have to tread it pretty carefully. But in principle, in our response, we said in principle we don't agree with the ban, because if you have a rigid system of testing and certification and a rigid system of inspection and sanctions, and Nick Coombs' point, sanctions for those of misdemeanors, you wouldn't need to ban it. And of course, when those products were tested after the fire, they failed spectacularly. But, the new system that's going to be developed isn't there. Something had to be done. The combustibility ban will effectively prevent another Grenfell-style external cladding fire. But kind of principle, it doesn't work. And that's why Hackett was so right, because she saw through that we need to address the system and not not individual quick fixes, as it were. Okay, so sum up. I've rambled on a bit about us, a bit about passive fire protection, installation, and the factors that cause it and how to address it, and mainly that relates to third-party certification, and finally some stuff on future development. Passive fire protection works provided it is designed and installed and specified correctly, and hopefully you only ever need to use it once. Thank you very much for listening.